We live in a different age, but we come from an even more different age, an age where you could put anything on screen and it was totally fine and no one cared at all. That's not the world we live in now. So we're talking about some of our movies that we've decided you just can't make anymore, and you maybe shouldn't have made at the time. Thank you guys for joining me. I want to introduce my guests, first of all, Elise Willems.
Thanks for having me, James.
Of course. What I should have done is I should have had you off camera and then pulled you in. We'll figure that out next time. Adam Kovic.
Hey, thanks for having me again.
And Freddie Wong.
Hey, it's me. It's the guy. Hey, I'm back, everybody.
Freddie.
Hey.
Man.
I have to say this because we were trying to figure out who was going to be on this podcast. We knew it was going to be the three of us because we talked about this topic before. I think Zach Anner was like the first one who was like, if you ever need a topic for a podcast, this is a good one. So we've just kind of been holding on to it. And then I was like, who would be good for this? And I think Elise was like, oh, you should see if Freddie would be interested.
Well, I just want Freddie in anything.
And I mean, sure. Freddie and I are friends, but we don't like text each other. It's not like our phones
we're not
buzz
on a textual basis,
and we go like, "Hey, how was your morning?" kind of thing. I sent you a message and I said, "Hey, would you want to do this podcast? It's about this." And within 45 seconds, I want to say, you were like, I'm in, here are my movies.
and then he got into our document, our Google Doc, and he started fucking around in it.
Yeah.
You guys are not using the right fonts. You know that there's other fonts you can do in Google Docs, right?
Quarantine is ruining you. Or you've always been this way. I don't know.
Yeah, he's big on papyrus.
Well, let me ask you real quick before we get started and jump into some of these movies. How are you doing? How are you doing, Freddie? You doing okay?
Doing good. Yeah. You know, we were very fortunate with our podcast and our Patreon that we're able to all be recording remote. And, for the most part, it's just navigating that difficulty. My neighborhood, I live in a very hip part of downtown LA called the Arts District. It has gotten a lot like what it was when I first moved in a decade ago. It is very quiet. It's very industrial. It's nice. The other day, a lady yelled at another group of people. She was walking her dog. The other people were like taking pictures in front of there's many walls in downtown LA that people take selfies in front of. So they're in front of one of these selfie brick facades.
Angel wings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what it is. There's like literally 4 angel wings from like walking distance from where I am. They're all here. Anyway, she was yelling at them. It was a grand old time here. That's all the news from downtown LA.
Beautiful.
Well, thanks for checking in with us. We'll get to you later.
I've been to your place before, and I will say it got a little late, and I was scared to walk to my car.
Yeah. So that was always like people's complaints, but. When we first moved in, it was even scarier, but there was no people. And I always said, it was like, you guys, you can't get robbed if nobody's here to rob you. Like, you can just sit around outside. You got to have people for crime.
And you also have priceless art artifacts in your apartment.
I do, actually. That's a big part of it. That's why I need to be cagey about where I'm staying, because obviously we have the Johnny 5 Aces art there.
Sleep next to it.
I sleep next to it. Well, since I know it's safe. If it's in the main room, someone could break a window, smash and grab, and I wouldn't have time to be able to rescue it, But here, they gotta get through me.
Beautiful. Well, Freddie, I appreciate you putting everything on the line to join us for this podcast. I'm really, because we've had you on Dude Soup before, we've had you in Gameplays before. I think this is the first time you've been on Funhaus, which is a movie podcast, and movies.
You would think that would be the first one that I would be on.
We don't want to typecast, which is something that I think none of these movies have in common.
to be fair, we have a Zyborn Claw cast that we haven't had him on.
We're launching,
yet.
We were planning to launch it, and then all this happened, and then we had to put it on hold indefinitely. So
I will say it's good that this topic is this topic, because normally, because I'm working in the film industry, I kind of reserve a lot of opinions I have for things that are out, newer stuff. Because the worst case scenario, because I learned this lesson the hard way, because Halo, you remember the Halo web series, Dawn, Reach or whatever.
Forward onto
Dawn. Yeah.
Sorry, it was Halo 4 Forward onto Dawn. I had to say that specifically.
I thought I was being a clever dude, and I was like, this is a boring web series. I didn't think it was that well done. And I said, more like Forward unto Yawn. Am I right?
Oh,
high-fiving you
3 years later, I was in a meeting, and the person sitting across from me was like, "So forward onto Jan, huh? You know, I worked on that." And I was like, "Oh,
Damn it.
So that's why I try not to say anything about movies that are like stuff that's out now. But old stuff, all good. And video game stuff, I can be so spicy with my video game opinions because I don't work in the video game industry. I got nothing to prove.
Oh, and you worked on Absolute Trash when you did.
Oh, absolutely. I'm the perfect person to talk crap about video games.
We're going to get into these movies, I swear. But one last thing, just because we're on the topic, you tweeted out recently a clip of you at the DICE Awards, I want to say.
Oh, yes.
Making a Duval magic joke or something.
And no one reacted.
No, they reacted. They were they were like, I was hosting the DICE Awards, and we had a bunch of jokes. They had jokes, and then I was like, these jokes are kind of bad. I want my peoples, Will, Matt, Brian, people who wrote VGHS, like, we were all working in the same place at the time. Like, you guys punch these up for me. And they were like, you're not using any of these. And then I was like, there's one of these jokes I'm going to use, even though it's not on a teleprompter. And it was a Randy Pitchford joke because I worked on Aliens, Colonial Marines, and the joke was essentially, welcome Randy Pitchford on stage. His company actually finished Duke Nukem Forever and almost finished Aliens, Colonial Marines. And the reaction in the room was, like, people were like, oh, because it wasn't a roast, apparently. And that's why I've never been allowed to host anything ever again.
Oh, well. You can come on
card,
and host
baby.
anything we ever do, ever. If you get that hosting itch, please host anything. We appreciate your fearless opinions.
Only if I can dunk on the video game industry. But we're not here to talk about video games. We're here to talk about movies.
Let's dunk on some movies, or I don't even know if it's dunking. I don't know. I just want to be clear before we get into this. We'll go around the horn, and each person can mention. We kind of have a top 5. We each pick top 5 movies that we think you can't make today and maybe shouldn't have made then. But I just want to be clear. This is a safe environment. I'm not speaking necessarily for anyone that might see this video or hear this video, but this is a safe environment. You can have fondness for these films.
Oh yes, I do.
You can
many
absolutely adore these movies. What we're trying to do, though, is acknowledge that there's certain things. Oftentimes, it's the humor. Sometimes it's not. It's just the concept alone that is not okay. And watching it in 2020, you're like, how? Who thought this was a good idea? And there's a lot of people that make movies, and everyone was on board with this. Well, my goodness, the times have changed.
We should specify, like, the way that they can't get made today is not because of the tech or anything. We're speaking specifically to the content is risque or insensitive in a PC climate. Well, we're saying that in today's like woke 2020, you couldn't make these movies.
It's like almost audience tolerance for how far things can go in a lot of cases.
And yeah, to your point, like a lot of these movies I really love, and I think maybe I'm a little bit more forgiving. Like I don't necessarily fit into a bracket of a lot of people that might be offended by a lot of the jokes in some of these movies.
Oh yeah.
So in my privileged bubble, it's like, yes, I'm able to like laugh at a lot of this. I think all 4 of us, I don't want to speak for anyone, but I think all 4 of us are the garbage people. Yes.
Who like we first judge whether or not if it makes us laugh, and then we judge whether or not what the social impact of our laughter is sometimes. And it's not always healthy, but I think all of us are also good people who are aware of that and then, try and consider that in our opinions.
And to me, it all comes down to awareness of it, right? It's one thing to be like, oh, this thing is funny, and then you just stop there. It's another to be like, oh, this is funny, this thing made me laugh. But you're also acknowledging, like, and I see where this is not a good depiction, or this is a shortcut they're taking, or this is a stereotype they're playing off of. You should never. I always believe you should never feel bad for laughing at something, because that's a human reaction. That's an emotional reaction. That should not be something you can really have any conscious control over. But the parts that you do have conscious control over, you should do your best to understand it, because that's just being a more aware individual, and I think that's a good thing.
I agree. Well, let's just go ahead and jump in. Elise, do you want to kick us off with one of your top 5 or whatever? Again, no particular order, but do you want to kick us off with your film that you put on there?
Yeah. I think we're going to see a trend across these, which is Richard Pryor. One of my movies is See No Evil, Hear No Evil, wherein him and Gene Wilder play a bumbling duo. They were often paired together in films. and one of them is blind and one of them is deaf. Mm-hmm. So like it's the classic odd couple situation. Hey. This movie makes me laugh a lot.
Oh, it's hilarious.
I ain't gonna lie. Like it's great.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's also like, you know, it's not like deaf people or blind people have changed at all, or like the cultural significance of them has, like, there's certain things like, you know, gay marriage and things like where culturally the world has moved together in a different place of tolerance and acceptance. Blind people and deaf people are the same. Like, our society's acceptance of blind hasn't changed, yet this movie acts as though they're like someone had to describe to Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder what a blind person and a deaf person was, because it's almost like they had no idea. But man, yeah, it's brilliant.
Well, it's one of those movies too where, you know, the premise came up at a bar or it was just a couple friends having fun, and then the part happened and we went, we still have 60 more minutes of a movie to shoot. Mm-hmm. What do we do once we exhaust the premise, which is I can't see and I can't hear.
But together. But like that fundamental like duology of like one person doesn't have X, the other person doesn't have Y, but to come with their powers combined, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like film 101. That's like that's like conflict 101. Like, yeah, so it's funny because I remember this was always on like the Comedy Central when we were growing up, right? This was the Comedy Central like go-to for the longest time, right? You guys remember that? It was on TV,
movie?
just constantly. This movie was on TV.
For some reason, I never got this one in my childhood rotation. I got a lot of Silver Streak, which should also probably be on this list. Another Richard Pryor, Gene Wilder film. But I got a lot of Silver Streak, but I didn't get this. We didn't watch this. We watched this.
Oh yeah,
as adults. I don't know if you had seen it, but I had never seen it before.
I had. But I also think like these are comedy legends too that you're dealing with as well. Mm-hmm. Richard Pryor, who pushed every boundary and did everything that was uncouth and like
in their prime.
You know,
who's our Richard Pryor in 2020?
Probably Paul Blart Mall Cop.
Oh, I was gonna say Kevin Hart, but yeah.
Or Kevin Hart, Adam Sandler. Well, right, like it is fun to think about like what are the movies right now that in 20 years people are gonna be like, whoa, I can't believe they were like right,
mock
like
fat mall cops. Yeah.
Yeah, well, who knows, right?
Yeah.
The thing is, I didn't even put Stuck on You on my list, and that movie's pretty recent.
Yeah, I mean, there's a ton. We each picked 5, okay, and there were still a ton that I was thinking of.
We should keep moving.
Let's keep rolling. Freddie, you want to hit us with yours?
Well, so it's funny
yours?
that so
did you change yours? Did you change yours?
Because I just remembered in the same premise.
Again,
this is a 1979
disrespecting
Hong
the
Kong
document.
martial arts film. This is a movie called, and it's the same basic like conflict premise as See No Evil, Hear No Evil, which was, and this is again bad term now, obviously, The Crippled Masters, and this one's about 2 kung fu artists, one who doesn't have arms. And the another one who doesn't have the use of his legs, and they team up, and it's like literally basically the same outline for it, which is they team up and they become like a fighting force together.
Yeah, they're like a Megazord.
Yeah, like and I think that film has always been kind of touch and go when it comes to dealing with disabilities of any kind. Mental disabilities, physical disabilities, and. I just don't think it's one of those things where I just don't think the populist film medium is just in a place to ever really just touch on that in a way that doesn't feel like you're just doing something weird or exploitative or like it's a tough one. It's a really difficult.
I was going to ask what's your bigger problem with the premise or with the name?
I mean, it's like both, because like right, like fundamental in the premise is like, you know, and you know, talking to one of my friends, his wife is an occupational therapist, and she talks a lot about how it's like a lot of the premises come down to, oh, you're not able to be complete, you're not able to live a complete life unless you have with said disability. And it's like, no, like that right away you're thinking about it and you're framing it from like an ableist mindset, right? So obviously right away the name and like. I feel like, and also obviously it's a translation of what the original, you know, like Mandarin is,
which is much worse, much more offensive.
I think both, but this one is very solidly in the realm of yours. There is no way a movie like this is ever going to exist ever again.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then what is interesting though? But then
I kind of want to watch it though.
It is awesome. It is awesome.
Yeah.
Like the choreography is amazing, and the two people who were the martial artists are, you know, I'm trying to. Where is it? I'm trying to.
Are they actual like people with disabilities?
Yes, genuinely.
Yeah.
As said, genuinely handicapped, and they were actual martial artists, and they teamed up for this, which is awesome. It's just like because you just see the guy who's like his hand speed is amazing. You know, it's just there's just so much stuff where you're just like, wow, this is really interesting. But
I would argue that you should make a movie like this today more than ever because. In the age of, well, let's have representation of everyone. If someone says, I'm a martial artist and I'm disabled,
I think the framing device has a lot to do with it, right?
Yes,
like the framing of it is, if it comes from a place of like inclusion or you know, making representation, then it probably is going to last a lot longer. But I think having not seen this film and based only on the title alone, this sounds more like, you know, kind of what Freddie is describing, which is an oddities type film.
It kind of pulls from this, you know, it pulls from the tradition of, you know, as bad as it is, like the Barnum and Bailey, P.T. Barnum, right, would find, you know, for his circus freak shows, as he called them, right? Like, and it's, on one hand, you're like, okay, he's giving employment to these people in society. On the other hand, he's exploiting them in this way, and it's complicated. And so you give me $200 million and an award-winning script, I will make this movie for you, Freddie.
Great.
Which show is this?
Adam, what have you got on there?
Oh, hey, it's me. I started with an easy one because I'm pretty sure this is the one everyone's thinking of. Only recently because Tropic Thunder came into the public conversation once again when Robert Downey Jr. went on the Joe Rogan Experience and talked about it. And that Robert Downey Jr. said this movie cannot be made anymore. And Joe Rogan was sort of confused of like, oh, why would you say that? And it's like, he's like, I just got off Iron Man. And then I do a movie where I play an Australian guy doing blackface, which
I think he's doing Australian face. And then he's doing blackface.
Which I think just makes it so absurd and takes it to a level that it's like, I think we're just at this level now where, I don't think you could get through the pitch phase of that anymore. And then I think once you put it into the movie, then it's like, oh, well, what are you going to do? But I think if anything, like It's Always Sunny has proven to us that it's like, you can still get away with this stuff. You just have to be very aware of what you're doing.
Well, you know? Yeah, I think it's always a weird situation because like if you had your foot in the door at the right time, then you can kind of go and do whatever you want to do. So It's Always Sunny it started around the time where you could do that kind of stuff. So it kind of like has this foothold on still being able to do that stuff. But if you wanted to pitch a show now today that does that stuff, someone would probably say, get out of here. We're not going to do that stuff. Right. So it is tough. Right? It is weird.
And also, by the way, these days, so much of it depends on star power in the first place. Right. Like a lot of stuff, like, especially on the television side, especially on the film side, like just stuff doesn't get made unless you have a star attached to it.
Yeah.
And so much of it these days is dependent on that. So it's like, in a weird way, I actually do think you could get stuff like this made. It requires an actor of the right caliber to throw themselves in on it and put themselves on the line. And what it really comes down to, it's not like the will of the money. It's more, I think actors are also afraid of putting themselves in a role or a position that gets them in a bad spot, right? Like that's the other thing that really is that is holding this from going.
The way Tropic Thunder approaches it as it's more so seems to be mocking not people of color, but it's mocking an actor that will go to extremes to method act. Mm-hmm. And I think there's that intention. I am not a person of color, so I cannot really speak to whether this is insensitive or offensive. Like, it really, if someone who is a person of color feels that way, like, they have every right to feel that way.
Yeah.
But to me, it does seem contextually a little bit different than just being like, oh, we're doing blackface for the sake of making fun of a people. No, it's like, no, it's making fun of this guy. And I think the movie tries to be aware of that, wherein like the other member of their team who is a person of color like calls him out on it.
They have essentially the straight man sort of like sanity check, sort of functions that way as a character, which is, again, I think it's important, because I think, thinking about, like, I think a lot about these days as a Chinese guy, like, Asian representation is really interesting and where that can go and where that's been. And one of my movies gets into that a little bit, but also, like, there's this weird thing right now where, and this was even a problem when I think it was Better Luck Tomorrow, Justin Lin's first movie came out, which is about 4, essentially criminal Asian kids. And he was getting flack because they're like, hey, you can't portray Asians in this negative light. And Ebert very famously defended him at that point in some big critic screening. He was like, well, why not? Isn't representation mean you can be villains as well as heroes as well? And I think that there's this hump, especially with, at least, just to speak in the narrow realm of sort of Asian representation, where there's this hump of like, we had all of this really bad, like Fu Manchu, evil, conniving Asian stuff as a result of, sort of post-Second World War and during the Second World War and sort of all that stuff that's been hanging over us. But we're also now in this place where it's like, well, you can't have just like a bad guy Asian, because then it's like, well, you can't have a negative. It's like, well, but it's right. Like, what you're trying to get to is being able to just be like, it should not be a problem. It should just be whatever. A character can just be this. In the same way you don't think about that. It's like, ooh, can we have a bad guy Italian? Is that going to get in the way of, the Italian, and by the way, for a minute, don't forget, like, right in the 80s, Godfather time, that was a contentious thing because there was all this stuff around like the mob and the mafia and all that stuff. So this stuff is in an ongoing timeline. But I don't know. I feel like you could. Tropic Thunder feels like it's a 50-50 for me. I feel like, again, it comes down to who is throwing the
Well, I think besides the blackface part of Tropic Thunder, there's also the thing that I thought was amazing that it got away with was the mocking the Hollywood subculture, which you still see in some movies, but not as much. And talking earlier about how, like, some people in the video game industry have thin skin. People in the movie industry are so protective. If you even mock any sort of their way of life, like, you have to do it in such a smart way that they don't notice. Pretty much.
Take Tom Cruise's character.
Yeah, I mean, he represents basically every Hollywood agent, and for the average moviegoer, goes, "Oh, he's just playing a funny character," but it's like, no, he's basing that on somebody with giant
Harvey
hands.
Weinstein. He's based on Harvey Weinstein. Yeah,
it's like an amalgamation of like Harvey Weinstein and like
but add that to the pile of things. Like, at the time, the movie is satire, right? Like, even there's Simple Jack is an element of that movie too. But again, like, that is acknowledging how terrible the actual attempts at representation of those types of characters are. Like, I do agree that it's like, you probably couldn't just walk into a room and say, here's this movie and it includes all these elements, and it'll be hard to convince people to justify those elements. But it's such a shame because Tropic Thunder is such a satirist take on all of those things that are probably the actual problems with the rest of the movies that are on our lists, So,
and I will say this, having had a little bit of experience, and obviously not naming names or anything like that, but one of the things that I have found looking at screenplays and like talking to various producers of all random levels, don't ever underestimate that there is a very bro-y, like, culture still in a lot of places,
especially,
and it's weird how, like, I've seen projects go way further than I would think they would go. And it comes totally just from the strength of a producer who's like, yeah, man, this is awesome. Oh, dude, it's going to be sick. And then some other producer be like, yo, this is going to be great. We're going to get this person. And you're just like, You guys, nobody's thinking about. Okay, all right. I guess this one. I'm not in the place to really. It's not my project, but it's like, wow, this one's just keeps on chugging along, and it's gotten this far.
This was your Crippled Masters reboot pitch, or what was it?
Yeah, they actually still even let me get in the room with that one. Yeah.
I do think that something that is at some of these films, and it's going to be the movie that I mentioned, is an attempt to showcase potentially an injustice or an underrepresentation or something like that, but gets so caught up in relishing the comedic potential of that.
Satire is tough in that you don't want to, right? Yeah.
So I'm going to say, I think this movie is a great movie. You couldn't make it today. The Toy, again, starring Richard Pryor. If you haven't seen it, it's the story of a lower class, I guess, a black man who works in a department store. He's kind of down on his luck. And then this super wealthy white kid is allowed to go into the store after hours to shop for anything he wants, while Richard Pryor, the janitor, is just cleaning up the place and kind of just having fun, making fun of his really shitty job. The kid sees him, and the kid was told he can have anything he wants in the store.
Oh, no.
And he says, I want him.
Oh, no.
And even in this movie, everyone acknowledges, like, well, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. But because he's so wealthy and so rich, they make it happen. They basically go to him and they're like, we'll give you, how much money do you want? Whatever do you want? You just have to go and live with this kid for the summer and be his play friend. And ultimately the movie I think is really great because it goes into the racism of it all. And the kid's father, he's like missing a father. He's so isolated from the world. He goes to military school. He doesn't have friends. He doesn't know about girls. He's missing this whole element of everything in his life. And this relative stranger who he thought is just equivalent, it thinks is the equivalent of a toy he can buy, right? Teaches him about the world. And then that guy also learns a little bit about himself. But so it is going, look, he's buying a black man, right? That's the premise. But
see, movie, like, again, I think it's interesting because it's like I could see that you're right, but like I could also see it's like with the right person putting their weight behind it, I could see them making that because again, it is incisive commentary. It depends on the angle you take, right?
Well, I guess the thing is though is that if they made it now, it probably wouldn't be as slapsticky fun because most of the gags in that movie are all like, isn't it so hilarious that they own a black guy?
It would be Jordan Peele making it as a social horror movie.
Oh, well, yeah, it would probably be.
What it would be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Of like a kid that tries to buy this person and they have enough money because of inequality to do that.
Because it comes down to...
Oh, sorry,
go ahead.
No,
you go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say I was disappointed in James's answer because I thought it was... Toys are
starring Robin
Williams. and I didn't know this movie existed starring Richard Pryor. It actually sounds like a pretty cool concept.
It's a great movie.
Starring Richard Pryor, because knowing Richard Pryor's background and his
Richard Pryor.
Oh, just for his contributions to the comedic world and the race related comedic world too, is like, oh my God, like I want to see what he does with this. I didn't know this movie was a thing.
It's a fantastic movie, and I think a lot of these movies are all great movies. I just think that there's something to be said about you couldn't make it now today, or at least you couldn't make it like that. It couldn't relish the fun of it all, of the fun and hilarity of this rich white guy owning a black guy. So, but we're going to pick up the pace. Everyone went around and gave one, but we're burning through a little bit of time. So we're going to pick up the pace and we're going to keep going through the rest of our films. But real quick, I want to let you guys know about our sponsor, Hims. Hims is a health and wellness brand that helps guys look their best, and for good reason. Did you know that 66% of men start to lose their hair by age 35? Once you've noticed thinning, it can be too late. You may have already seen your hairline slowly receding backwards or bald spots forming. The solution is forhims.com, a one-stop shop for hair loss, skincare, sexual wellness for men. It's time to write a new chapter, one in which you have plenty of hair. It may sound crazy to think about, but thanks to science, baldness can be optional. Hims is helping guys be the best version of themselves with licensed physicians and FDA-approved products to help treat hair loss. This means no snake oil pills or gas station counter supplements. Hims promotes prescription solutions backed by science. Hims was created by a guy who knows that some health conversations involving men are easier online than in person. You don't have to go to an awkward in-person doctor's visit if you don't want to, or wait in long pharmacy lines if it's more convenient to do it in your own home. Hims connects you to real doctors online, which could save you hours. It's completely confidential and discreet. Just answer a few quick questions, then your doctor will review your responses, and if they determine that this kind of treatment plan is right for you, they can prescribe your medication to treat your hair loss, and it's shipped directly to your door. Right now, Filmhouse fans can get started with their first month for free. So go to forhims.com/filmhouse. That's forhims.com/filmhouse. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a physician who will determine if a prescription is appropriate. Offer valid only if prescribed 3-month minimum subscription. Additional restrictions apply. See website for full details and important safety information. And remember, that's forhims.com/filmhouse. And we're back. Thank you guys for joining me again for our movies that maybe we can't make today, no matter how great they were then. Let's just keep going around the horn. I think we're enjoying talking about these too much. So we don't have to just say it and move on, but let's just go ahead, Elise. Let's hear it.
I'm gonna do one that actually wasn't in my 5, but it's tertiary.
They work so hard to grab B-roll broadcast.
Never mind. I'll do it in my 5.
No, you can do whatever you want. It's fine.
No, it's with one of my heroes, like literally top 5 comedy heroes is Steve Martin in The Jerk. I was born a poor black child. It's such a fucking good joke. It's so good. And then this ignorant and just oblivious man, not realizing, not having this real, like having to be told by his family is just so funny. It's so funny.
A beautiful idiot.
Could you do this joke now? Maybe.
Steve Martin could.
We Jess and I watched this movie recently. It's one of her favorite movies. I saw it once when I was a kid, and I was like, yeah, I wonder. And yeah, watching it in the year 2020, you're like, oh my. But my thing was more of like, how do you pitch a movie like this now, where it's like, it's Steve Martin, and it was like, what does he do? He just kind of goes places. Like he eventually gets.
We don't have people like that anymore, right? Yeah. Like Jim Carrey was like the last guy that it was like, I can put Jim Carrey and whatever the concept is, I'll buy it and I get it, right? It's like we don't have that level of comedian like movie star.
Well, it's a level of comedian that is so well rounded. So they're a comic, they're an actor, they're a writer. Their timing is just impeccable. They have charisma. Like it is getting rarer. I think maybe someone like a Will Forte, maybe you could put in a
Bill Hader
in a jerk role. Bill Hader is an amazing actor. He's an amazing comic.
See, like there was always, so one of our good friends who's a producer has a rubric that he uses for movie stars, and he's always said this. He's like, a person is a movie star if guys want to be their best bud and women want to sleep with them. That is like the key. It's like you need to have that kind of charisma and energy. And like, it's like Bill Hader, it's like, yeah, I could see like being buds, but I feel like he's not like that attractive compared to, like even because like that's what this era had. That's what like the Steve Martins and even, arguably, even the Jim Carreys and stuff, those guys, like they had sort of this weird broad appeal, and they've tried, by the way, like they've tried to get like, what's his face? Chris Pratt?
The Hemsworths, the Pratts, the Evans.
They tried to get Chris Pratt, right? But it's like,
He's close, but he's close, missing he's missing the charisma. Like that's the thing with Steve Martin. He was this all around character, and yes, definitely had sex appeal for the Elises of the world who like the grandfather look, especially when they.
I think funny guys.
I think Steve Martin was also kind of the end of the vaudeville era, right? Where someone came up,
Smother Brothers,
and it was like performance art. Like they went on tour for a live audience, and they wrote like you said, they wrote their own stuff. They came up with their own characters, and they performed all their stuff. They filled in all those gaps, like Monty Python and stuff. And now it does seem like people have settled into roles. I feel like Freddie, you would have way more insight into this than I do, but I feel like some of it has probably to do with maybe the packaging of how agencies
yes, 100%.
Like they want people in buckets so that way they can put buckets together and then triple their fees.
Yeah, they
or
can
whatever.
get more people in on that, and and the tradition of vaudeville, which starts with it starts with the vaudeville era, and that's all your silent film stars, that's your Chaplins, that's your Keatons, those types of people just feel rarer and rarer these days.
Yeah, I would say John Mulaney is a little bit of a throwback to that. I don't know that he has maybe like leading man power. We saw that with the failed Mulaney.
But and the other thing that they all bring to it, when I look back at that group of people, is also a physicality, right? Like Steve Martin has a physicality in the way he moves. That is again, like people like. Actors, when you hear about actors, putting clauses being like, "Oh, I don't want to get punched because I'll look bad," and it's like Steve Martin is not afraid of looking bad, and that's kind of fearless, exactly, and that's what you need for this.
Yeah. It's a far cry from the Buster Keatons of the world that were like, jump in front of the train, Buster, and he's like, "Yeah, I guess," and he's like, "Did you get it? No, there was no film in the camera."
Buster Keaton says, "I'll jump in front of the train." That's the difference. Buster Keaton goes, "You know what would be great if I jumped in front of a train," and everyone's like, all right, I'm just going to crank this camera. That's what you want to do, bud. Freddie, what do you got?
So here's one. Blank check.
Okay.
For a couple of things. For a couple of reasons. Number one, I know it's the number one, checks. And the premise of that movie is so preposterous to get there, because it's like, not only is this kid depositing a blank check without it, it also happens to be at the bank where there's a crime thing going on, so the guy at the bank thinks the crime is going, and that's part of the, it's like there's so many like hoops they have to jump through just to get this kid a bunch of money. One, kids don't understand what banks are. They don't know what checks are. Everything's direct deposit. They don't get what that means. But two, his relationship with the grown ass adult woman is there's no, it's like an 80s comedy like thing where it's like, wouldn't it be funny if like the kid and it's like the hot lady, it's like, you can't do that,
well,
dude.
This is a problem that you seem to have consistently, because you also have Big on your list.
Oh, Big is also part of this. Yes, both this and Big suffer from the same problem, which is like, cool, fun, quirky premise. What about if a mature woman seduces this human child?
But
okay.
Yeah. But only that's the difference, though. In Blank Check, it's an actual child. In Big, he just has the mental capacity of a child.
He doesn't know what's going on.
This debate, if you want to get into this debate,
I don't know which one is worse.
I know. To me, they are both ones where you're just like, when you're watching, it's like, isn't this a kid though?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Big is. I don't know if that's a victimless crime. No, there's victims. There's. I don't know. But I mean, it's all coming from those broy executives. Like, dude, wouldn't it have been so cool if you got to be a kid and you get to be adult, and you bang the girl and get to be a kid again? They high five each other, but it's the same guy.
Well,
which is weird.
Like it's the Freaky Friday model. It's the kid. Kids love watching other kids be adults. It's like something like it's why Home Alone was so successful, because little kids want to see another kid in this fantasy that's doing things that only grown-ups do.
Or
kids
why
don't
Power
do.
Rangers Turbo was not successful, because no one wanted to see that kid as a Power Ranger.
Good point. Also, Home Alone, there's not a scene where he goes to a bar and hits on
Bangs
chicks.
a woman. Yeah.
Yeah. There's not a lot of romance in that.
Not a lot of romance in it. But they always, like all these movies always felt like, these comedies always felt like they had to throw like a romance element. And then at a certain point, you're just like, oh, really though? Okay.
I feel like those things are for the adults, because they wanted everyone to see this movie. So they were like, let's make a movie which has the kid identifier, but then we also know that there's going to be a bunch of adults that are going to want to bang this chick. So like, let's make sure that's in there too. I thought you were going to, your criticism of Blank Check you were going to say that Blake Snyder's beat sheet doesn't hold up in our untraditional filmmaking forum. But
I would say that if I wasn't seeing every screenwriter in every Starbucks like referencing it on the side as they're writing their screenplays. I feel like
gotta
it
save
is
that
alive
cat.
and well. You got that cat's got to get saved.
Adam, what do you got? You have an interesting one here.
I chose Batman Forever.
Yeah, why?
Because Batman Forever, I think, was at the height of who cares with superhero movies. They're making lots of money. We can do whatever we want. Source material be damned. And they were awarded for it, basically applauded, if you will. They said, "Oh my God, look how crazy you got with it." There were obviously the true to life Batman fans who were like, "This isn't my Batman, but I'll go along with it." And then it wasn't until Batman Robin when it, they stuck it in just a little bit and said, "Is that okay?" And then they just went hard. Is when everyone got upset. Mm-hmm. But I think now, especially the way source material is handled, you could never do you can get away with silliness, but it still has to be true to the source material.
You can't do campy with regards to superheroes anymore, period.
I don't think any of them, no. Even though some of them would probably do
benefit
better
from it. Oh, 100%.
Yeah, like Fantastic Four is probably a better thing to do camp with, but like maybe like a modern Brady Bunch angle, sort of thing, like the Brady Bunch movie. But just looking at Batman Forever, there's so many moments. If you rewatch it, we talk about it constantly on Funhaus, but it's one of those movies that the more you watch it, if you watch it over and over, every time you're like, how did they say yes to this? It's just shot after shot, and then it just keeps getting crazier because like people always talk about Batman Robin having the bat nipple suit. It's like, no, it was in Batman Forever. That was the secret suit he was working on. That he said, it's the prototype. Is it ready? Well, we haven't field tested. It's like, it has nipples on it. Well, how are you going to field test this? I don't. Anyway,
I thought you were saying that they couldn't make this again because they will never ever find a banger as good as "Kiss from a Rose" to put on the soundtrack.
I agree.
I mean that is another part of a bygone era too.
Oh, the movie soundtrack era, right?
Yeah, where like it's the music video comes out on MTV or VH1 or whatever, and it has parts from the movie, and that's it's a trailer. You're watching marketing in action, and it's also from Seal, who's on Warner Brothers Records. So it's like this perfect synergistic monster.
This is a capsule of a bygone era and tone that I think we're fortunate that we got and that we lived through.
Oh no, I'm so happy. The McDonald's commercials too with the cups. Come on.
Yeah.
Now, I will say the new Sonic movie kind of starts to approach some of the camp, but that's 100% just Jim Carrey bringing it in.
Yeah, I think Jim Carrey just wears the camp, and it's if you have Jim Carrey, you're gonna get it.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Yeah. Anyway, Batman Forever, I salute you.
Well, I'm gonna jump in here with mine, which I thought was on Freddie. When I saw Blank Check, I was like, oh, I was gonna put that, and I was like, no, I'm putting Blank Man. Blank Man.
Well, you have two sides. You have two sides of a coin in yours. You have Blank Man and Forrest Gump.
Yes. Are those two sides of a coin?
Explain.
Well, no.
Yeah, explain yourself.
So
they're movies that exploit someone, a person who is.
Well, I was gonna say, here's the interesting setup about Blank Man, is that they're in Living Color, an amazing sketch comedy show from the 90s. There was a character called Handyman that Damon Wayans portrayed, who was a person with a disability, and it's kind of unclear what it was, some sort of central nervous system thing or whatever. But he was just a person with disability, and there was a whole world, like a Justice League of people with disabilities and stuff like that. Ugh. And then it's clear. This movie seems clear that they went to a place and they pitched it, and then that place said, "No way, we're not doing that. That's not okay." So they reined it back, and the end result is Blank Man, where Damon Wayans portrays not a person with a disability, but the most nerd ever in existence, like some sort of hyper autism,
but definitely
or Asperger's
based
or something.
On Handyman.
Oh, it's clearly you can see where the premise began, and so even some of his like physical mannerisms are the same. But it's just funny to think that their compromise now is still something you can't make. Right. And I think Blank Man is amazing. Like all of these things, I think Blank Man is amazing, but it's just funny to think how far that we've gotten with it, you know?
I do think it's interesting that you have Forrest Gump on your list, though, because Forrest Gump is, a more serious film.
Yeah, I think Forrest Gump is fantastic, but I still think the portrayal in today of Tom Hanks doing this character, right? Mm-hmm. Where they kind of establish he's he's just kind of slow, right? But that's his charm. But like, look at how all these magical things he does. Like, I think that you just couldn't make it, no matter how brilliant this film is. You just couldn't
isn't
do
that
this.
Oscar bait for like actors though, right?
Well,
Isn't that,
that
was the joke. Yeah, Tropic Thunder.
This is what Tropic Thunder's
the
mocking,
Sean Penn,
right?
I Am Sam thing.
Yeah.
It's,
Leonardo DiCaprio and What's Eating Gilbert Grape.
And you can't go full. That's what they said. It's a whole line in it. And so Forrest Gump isn't. It's unclear kind of what his condition is, but he clearly has a condition. But I don't know that this would fly, partially because it's too close to being something that is maybe exploitative or kind of like, strange, as an oddities thing, but then also something else that is not clear enough. Like, I feel like it's a softball and people would criticize it for being like, well, you didn't depict him in any way. He's just this magical person who understands the world pretty clearly and maybe seems more wise than everyone else, but is also unintelligent. Like,
what are you trying to say with this movie?
What are you trying to say? Yeah.
That book, by the way, is I remember reading the book when I was a kid and being like, oh, it's a funny book. But then in retrospect, I'm like, this book is bad. Like, this... Have you heard we can get into a whole discussion of this, and this may be another podcast, but I think Forrest Gump is secretly kind of a bad movie.
I think...
Explain yourself.
I agree.
I don't think it's a good movie.
I think that we used to be at this place where a movie can be bad, but be made incredibly well, and then people will acknowledge it as a good movie, right? Like, I always say Jingle All the Way is a stupid concept, but after it got out of that phase, everyone that worked on it worked really hard to make the best possible movie they could. And obviously there's artifacts of how stupid the concept is, but the end result is something that's intensely watchable and fun and enjoyable. And I think that is something that we don't do as much anymore. Like, everyone just kind of agrees that we're making a movie, and then they kind of don't care, and then they just do the things that they do to get it done, and then it gets done, and the end result is something forgettable.
I think the story is, or the compromise is that, yes, you do still want to be able to tell stories from the perspective or featuring, people with disabilities. It's just the way that they're handled, and also like there's a consideration for casting as well, like a movie like Peanut Butter Falcon that came out last year, which does like feature an actor with Down syndrome, but there's like a sensitivity and an intent to it, and obviously like featuring an actor that has that condition, like it's a whole conversation now.
Well, let me learn you some history. At least there was a movie called The Ringer, starring Johnny Knoxville, that did just that before Peanut Butter Falcon or whatever.
Well, and I've never seen The Ringer, but my understanding of it is that like it's actually more mocking Johnny Knoxville and like showing that those people, the people in it are still capable.
But by the time that movie came out, South Park had done an episode that was the exact same thing. That was 22 minutes and was all you needed to tell that story.
Yeah. Once again, you get into that conundrum of here's the premise, here's the concept. We're filming, shoot. We have more movie to film. It's a 20-minute idea, and we're at 19. What do we do?
Yeah.
Now the thing about Forrest Gump to me that really is impressive, that can never be repeated, is the fact that somehow this Oscar award-winning movie spawned a actually successful chain of sit-in restaurants.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
I would never, like, could you, like, if you had to go back in time, like, if you had to pick, you'd be like, what movie franchise, like, without even knowing, like, in this decade, spawned the only successful restaurant chain? Forrest Gump is so low on that list of what you'd expect.
Man, I didn't even think
so
about that.
Insane to me to think that, like,
it's going on like 45 years now or something.
It is so insane to me they managed to make a shrimp restaurant like survive and be like a thing on the same level like Applebee's is a thing out of this Oscar award-winning movie. That's
I should check if they
probably
do delivery. Hold on.
Freddie, there are probably a lot of people that don't even associate with Forrest. Like they probably don't even realize it's associated
like
with
it is like straight up like simulation and simulacra. We're past the point of the thing it's copying. It is its own beast at this point. It is its own entity. They're gonna make a Bubba Gump movie. Someone's gonna walk in pitching a Bubba Gump movie. And they're like, you know that this is originally a movie thing, right? They're like, what?
Yeah, I agree.
The Bubba Gump movie restaurant, right? Yeah. Psycho.
If nothing else, I feel like it should never be allowed to be made again for what it's left us with bubblegum shrimp. Elise, what do you got?
I'll give you one more. It's The Party with Peter Sellers. Where Peter Sellers plays an Indian man who is just completely aloof and out of his element and goes to a party. It's a comedic juggernaut, like really. And Peter Sellers, of course, like if you look at his career, he kind of has, he's got a few roles that are kind of questionable. You know, obviously Murder by Death, where he's playing like a Charlie Chan type character, which is a complete like racist stereotype and caricature.
Being there.
It sucks because it's like, there's a version of The Party where it does not need to be an Indian man. It's just like a befuddled Mr. Magoo type. You know, it really did. I don't think it really needed to be an Indian man and have like that layer of just, you know, him talking in a funny accent to make people laugh. I think it's a funny movie with the bits it does aside from that.
Yeah. Peter Sellers, though, is a character actor and is very rarely seen doing himself. Like he's famous for Clouseau, right? Which is him doing a French archetype.
Well, that's the thing is like Clouseau is a total goofball and, you know, Michael Scott type character. Really, like you could have had him doing sort of a Clouseau shtick in this.
Yeah, this is kind of Peter Sellers' MO.
Yeah.
Peter Sellers, an incredible acting talent who would never get work today.
Well, I'm looking at the trailer for this movie. I've actually never seen it, and it looks like one of those movies like where they threw a party and then they're like, we'll get a movie out of it.
Yeah.
You know, we'll just have fun, you know? And it's like, am I watching, what was that movie? Project X or like the,
Oh yeah.
yeah. Or looks like the people are having too much fun in front of the camera. I don't know what to make of this. Now I want to watch it.
It's a kind of a weird psychedelic movie of the time period too.
Yeah. It's farcical character study kind of thing. Yeah, I agree. That's a great pick.
It looks like they took inspiration from Austin Powers, so I think I'll check it out.
Yeah. Freddie, what do you got?
So I'm going to throw the John Hughes classic 16 Candles on there. And now I acknowledge that this is like a formulative, it's a great movie. However, it's also a movie that has a character who's named Long Duck Dong.
Yep.
So that's we'll start with that.
That's the whole thing.
And then also it's a movie that uses like non-consensual sex as a punchline, kind of. There's a lot of rape and racism and all this stuff in there, and you're like, boy, oh boy, oh boy, it's one of those ones where like John Hughes, it's a classic. Boy, it does not age well. I think it is everything good and everything terrible about like sort of that 80s era of comedy and coming of age story all rolled into one.
Yeah. It's a weird testosterone, like a pre-teen testosterone where it's not machismo. It's just like, I need to grab that girl's panties kind of thing. Like it's a really weird, it's charged with it. And I get the point of it is to show this confused young girl's journey through all of that, right? How's she supposed to navigate this world when she feels so plain and doesn't feel like this is what's happening to her? But man, everything.
Yeah, I want to point out too, it wasn't like date rape was an okay thing in the 80s either.
Oh yeah,
it was also still like, you know what I mean? Like it's one of those weird ones. You're like, man, I wonder. It's one thing to look at it now and be like, oy, Long Duck Dong, huh? Boy, oh boy, good name for a character, huh? But I also wonder at the time was like, dude, would it be like? I have to feel like in the theaters even back then, people were like, really, you guys?
Yeah.
Well,
really?
It's the sort of thing like when you were talking about Forrest Gump being a bad movie, And the thing James always brings up too with like Steven Spielberg of like being, you know, a magician essentially with a movie. 16 Candles' greatest illusion is that they made date rape like laughable and fun and lighthearted. And then, because in the moment you go, oh, okay, it's just a movie. And then you think about it and go, wait, that's terrible.
Well, you're also like, the nerd got the girl.
Well,
It's like, but did he?
and it's also the moment that causes the girl to realize that maybe her priorities were in the wrong spot. Like maybe she should be more focused on these little guys who can date rape her.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like,
Yeah.
so I just want to toss into this because it's for similar reasons. Revenge of the Nerds was on my list. Yeah. Revenge of the Nerds, which again kind of comes from the angle of being an underdog story. In the 80s, the nerd culture was like, you know, everyone wanted to be the jock, but there was still this group of nerds, and this is the first representation, quote unquote, of the nerds. But it's a very caricature-like representation of what nerds are and kind of that college life. But more importantly, the reason I included it was because there is also a rape sequence in it as well, where one of the nerds, the hero, who has an infatuation with the girlfriend of the bully, the guy who bullies them, like with his girlfriend, meets her in a haunted maze or something like that during a fair, wearing a Darth Vader mask, if I recall, and then she assumes it's him, so then they have sex, but then it's treated as like a gotcha, like. Yeah. Like, well, I really, I can't believe I got away with that. Oopsie, wearing a Darth Vader mask. But then also, like, I also used her to show this boyfriend, like, to get back at the boyfriend, too, even though she's not related to this conflict at all. And I'm like, I can't believe you did that to Darth Vader. So, and you also have a delightful racist archetype of basically around the globe. It's weird. It's
privacy.
It's tough though because in some ways there's the representation where we've managed to represent this class that isn't necessarily represented. There's an openly gay black man that's that's one of the major nerds. That's the only reason he appears to be considered one of the nerds. But I can't really think of that representation anywhere else prior to that. Which is like a weird, like, hey, good for you. That was terrible kind of thing on the whole side of it. So that's definitely why I wanted to have that.
And it's also like for a lot of these, when you look back at them, there's also to me a real element of it's like, man, guys, I know you guys are trying to get this across, but also at the same time, now looking back, you're like nerds as the underdog, like. Nerds run the world. They're not the underdogs anymore. Like Zuckerberg's not the underdog. He owns all of our data. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. You know, like even that archetype immediately doesn't even work anymore.
Yeah, but even in the movies, though, it was always like, but the nerds are cool, and in the end, they get the girl and 7 more movies. So who's laughing now?
I'm going to throw out a handful too that you guys can discuss in the comments as well, so we won't have time to get to them all, but they're worth mentioning. Blazing Saddles, Shallow Hal. Do You Want a Man, American Pie, Birdcage. Birdcage only because I think we're all maybe more socially conscious now, and the son in that movie is so shitty.
He sucks.
Like, and I feel like now he made that movie, and this son who is like so ashamed of his gay father and their lifestyle, like we'd all be like, that guy's a douchebag, fuck that guy.
You have these rich parents that have taken care of you your whole life, you can't even acknowledge them.
There was a Fresh Air podcast with Hank Azaria, and they touched on the Birdcage a little bit and talking about what it was like when they filmed that. It's actually really I recommend listening to it. He mostly talks about his show Brockmire, and a little bit of The Simpsons, but then they talk about Birdcage towards the end. I thought that was like kind of interesting that they brought it up, and I think he even says like, oh yeah, we couldn't make that movie today. Like, and he's like, I would actively campaign against myself for being in the movie, and I would rather someone else be properly represented.
Adam, please don't
character.
Please don't shout out other podcasts on this podcast unless they're Freddie's.
I mean, yeah. I think that's like one of those podcasts where it's like, don't shout out, I don't know, FM radio. It's just so big that it's like it doesn't.
Yeah, I know.
It's like we're so small.
At the same time, though, I will say this: apparently, they're trying to do a Tiger King movie, and you would think that the quality of the people involved in that, you're like, everyone here sucks, but we're gonna do a movie about it, huh? All right, okay, we're playing it for laughs still. So I think you never know, right? If something's popular enough and people think they can make a buck off of it, they'll give it a shot. They'll risk it for the dollar bills.
I would pay anything to see the audition tapes.
I know, we're such garbage humans. We're all like, oh no, these movies bad. Give us the tapes.
I mean, watching Tiger King.
Yeah, what does it say about us?
Real quick before we wrap this up, because we're going about an hour, I just want to give everyone an opportunity to shout out, at least because kind of shouted out some last ones that we didn't get to discuss in detail. Adam, do you have any that you wanted to toss into the pile?
I threw in Basketball just because the Zucker brothers haven't made a funny movie in forever. Bowling for Columbine, just the sense of the world and how it's become so common now that a documentary doesn't even make sense anymore, which is a horrible thing to say. And then finally Grease, because we need more 35-year-olds playing teenagers. And it sucks for guys like me who's never going to get work,
as a teenager.
Like a cool 50s greaser, who's not in his 50s. Well, close.
I'm just saying that that's a matter of attitude, my friend.
You got to think young.
So I should get the surgery.
Yes.
Do you smoke?
Yeah.
Do you roll your smokes up in a little thing on your shirt? I mean, I don't even see that. You have a T-shirt on. You're not gonna have a pack of cigarettes in there. Who are you kidding?
Do you drive a hot rod? Is there a hood on your car, or can we see the engine exposed?
The invisible one. Yeah.
Freddie, you got any other that you want to throw in there?
No, that was. I got through my list efficiently.
You got them all?
But yeah, basically, you can take any '80s comedy and throw it on this list and be like, "We have our morals changed?"
Yeah. The one last one that I want to mention is Soul Man. I don't know how many people are aware of this movie.
Yeah,
but this is
that's
the movie
the thumbnail for this video.
This is the one that made me think of this. The whole started the whole list because I feel like it's maybe one of the worst of them, and it's C. Thomas Howell plays this middle-class white guy who's trying to get into a prestigious university. Unfortunately, I guess it's a African American only university.
Oh.
And how unfair is that? So he comes up with the idea to do blackface and enroll in this school, and which is focused a lot on, African American studies and everything like that. It's also a very well-to-do university, and he makes friends and finds a love interest and all this stuff. But the heart of it is kind of like well, that's not fair that I, middle-class white guy, am being excluded from this kind of thing. And so, and of course, he has a change of heart as things go on, but it's too late. He's already in the school, and I can't imagine. I haven't seen it in many years, but I can't imagine he's appropriately punished for what he actually does.
Stay gold, pony boy, or whatever shade of shoe polish you used. You monster.
That's a real Rachel Dolezal.
Yeah,
move.
I would
Remember
also.
her?
No. Yeah, I do.
She was kind of like a African American spokesperson, but then it was revealed that she just sort of like used a lot of self tanner and did her hair and just
Okay. I would also throw Short Circuit 1 and 2, unfortunately, into that for the same reason. But also because robotics have advanced considerably since then.
I'd say the same thing about Hackers, but James has never seen it, so we can't have this conversation.
That's for another podcast.
Speaking of other podcasts, Freddie, where can our fans find you?
You can find us. We got a couple of podcasts. One's called Story Break, and actually had a great idea for a story break this time around. Elise has been on this one. We take a movie idea, we try and break it in an hour. I'm adding this one to the list. We're gonna try and break the Bubba Gump movie. Like, what?
Oh, that's great.
Like, how good would that be?
Awesome.
If you need a guest,
you can call me
Forrest
anytime.
Gump like the back of his hand.
I love that stuff. When you come on Dude Soup and we've just done it on the fly, I love trying to figure that out.
Okay,
so just let me know.
Let's do it. The other podcast we do is a Dungeons & Dragons podcast called Dungeons & Daddies, which is not a BDSM podcast. It's about 4 dads in the fantasy world and trying to solve fantasy problems with dad solutions, and they're looking around for their kids because they've lost their kids. It's called Dungeons and the Daddies. You can find that anywhere podcasts are.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's us.
Freddie, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
We love doing shit with you, and we're probably going to be reaching out to you pretty more and more often because this is a very simple way to. You don't have to commute.
I know, this is so much easier. Yeah, just give me a call anytime. I love hanging out with y'all. Awesome, thanks, man, and thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening, and thank you to our sponsor Hims. And we will see you next time. Bye.